Texier is going to the Olympics, but who else do I think will be joining him?
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues on this Monday. Today is June 16th. And I have exciting news for all of you because our one and only Mr. Texier will be at the Olympics representing France. And I am so happy for him. So we're going to talk about that. But we're also going to talk about a couple other players that I think will have the opportunity to go to the Olympics. We have to have a conversation about Letty and Jay Folk. Listen, I understand both sides to this argument about why you want to keep him and why you would not want to keep them. However, I think we just really need to talk about the pros and the cons. Finally, I know we've been talking about Joel Hofer in the backup goalie situation, but as the draft is nearing, for whatever reason, I'm getting more and more nervous because it's closer to July. And I'm going to talk about listen, hear me out. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of waiting to see what other teams might offer him versus what would be the pros and cons if the Blues just extended him. So we have a lot to get into on today's episode. I do want to apologize for my last couple episodes. You know, my Wi-Fi router is a little bit spotty time to time, so I think it's all figured out now. So I hope all of you can appreciate the fact that this is good Wi-Fi. We're starting off the week on a good note, and hopefully a lot of good things happen for the Blues this week. The Olympics. It's inevitable that the Olympics are going to be a huge conversation for you and I in the next couple months, more so than ever, because the rosters are kind of being released a little bit. So today it was announced, and again, I just want to preference this by saying that the country has released only 6 players, right? So it's not a full roster. It's only 6 players. But it was announced that Mr. Texier will be representing France. And I am so happy for him. Doug Armstrong made comments, too, about how much he's improved. And I really do believe that this season, despite him not maybe playing as many games, I do have a statistic, actually. I made a little sheet for all of you here on Locked On Blues, so that way you would be able to see. And that way, it's a nice visual representation as well. So I'm going to pull that up for all of you right now. But yes, he didn't really play as many games. He played, listen, in my opinion, right, he played 31 games. Now, I wouldn't say that's a bad thing for him because he did play well in the games that he did play in. He scored 6 goals, 5 assists for 11 points total. Again, when you think about it, 31 games played and you have 6 goals and 5 assists, I'm okay with that. Totaling, as I said, to 11 points. Now, again, penalty minutes, 10. But this is what gets me excited. He had 50 shots on goal, and his shooting percentage was at 12%, which is actually above the average in the NHL. I believe the average is like 11.5, so it's above the average. So I will say that. And also, too, with his shooting efficiency, like, you have to just take into account that this was only out of 31 games played. Now, again, we can look at home and away, right? When he was at home, he scored 2 goals, no assists for only 2 points. But on the road, he had 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points. He had 21 shots on goal at home and 29 on the road. So this is what's most interesting. Texier. He's only scored goals in winning games. Isn't that crazy? 6 goals in winning games. Isn't that insane? I thought that was actually a really cool statistic. And if we want to look at months, he played 6 games in October, 7 in November, 7 in December, 5 in January, 2 in February, and 4 in March. The month that he had the most in point-wise was December with 2 goals and 2 assists. And I have to tell you, that's when the Blues kind of took that turning point. It was after that Four Nations face-off. So again, no surprise about that one. But just to break it down, on the road, he has a 13.8% shooting percentage and 9 points over 16 away games. As I said, all 6 goals were scored in victories. And for me, at least, that just goes to show how much he does contribute to the Blues when they have success. So I like that a lot out of him. He didn't really have anything in November and January, let's be honest. Like, it was really bad. But in March, he was efficient with his scoring percentage, 40%. 40%, okay? Insane. Now, total ice time was about 12 and a half minutes per game. Again, he was either, you know what? He was basically consistent with that, so I'm not going to even touch on that. It was very consistent with that time. And he earned 1 power play goal and 1 game-winning goal. So, again, he really did contribute as somebody that's really reliable depth-wise, especially away from home, right? In those away games that resulted in wins, honestly. So, again, I am really proud of him. And I think that this is just kind of like the starting point for Texier. And again, you have to look at, too, that he did represent France in the World Championships. 6 games he played, 1 goal, 1 assist. His first goal, by the way, was in November. And it was in a 4-2 loss to Utah. But hey, Texier scored, so that's exciting. And again, as I said, we can break down all the statistics. But I do think, too, that he adds a lot of depth. And again, like, there's not that many French NHL players. But this is going to be a great experience for him. I mean, he gets to represent his country playing in the Olympics. So again, congratulations, Texier, Olympic bound. He is the only Blues so far that has been Olympic bound. As, again, you kind of expect who you're going to expect for Canada right now. But here is my conversation to you. If you were to think of one player on the Blues who's Canadian, right? So there's a good amount that deserves a spot on the Olympic team, who was one of the best players on the Blues, who didn't get to play in the Four Nations face-off, who are you thinking of? Did you answer Robert Thomas? Because Robert Thomas, 110%, in my opinion, deserves a spot on Team Canada. Robert Thomas is an elite center. And it would be a mistake not to have him on the Olympic team. I was really upset when he didn't make the Four Nations face-off team for Canada. I was happy for Binnington, Parayko, but I was still bummed that we didn't see Robert Thomas. Was it because he was injured at the beginning of the season? There are so many questions surrounding why we didn't see Robert Thomas in the Four Nations face-off. But for the Olympics, this is the biggest stage that you can play in besides the Stanley Cup Finals, even though he literally won a Stanley Cup Finals his rookie year because, yeah, I guess this is like the next biggest stage. And I just don't see a world where we don't have Robert Thomas on Team Canada. That would be a huge mistake to me. And I'm sure for you, you're feeling the same way. So I did ask you on social media, I asked you on Twitter at Locked On Blues, do you think Robert Thomas will make the Olympic team for Canada? 83% of you say yes, while 16% of you say no. So to my 16%ers, I want to know, why is it that you think Robert Thomas wouldn't make the team? Do you think that there's that many better players than him that are Canadian? Do you think that he didn't do enough last season, even though he definitely did? I just don't understand how you can make the argument that Robert Thomas doesn't deserve to make that team. So please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to get your opinion. Again, this show today, it's going to feature a lot of opinions because opinions about the Blues are going to vary. What if I came on this podcast and I said, guys, we should keep Nick Leddy and Justin Folk? I'm sure you're probably thinking, Haley, that's a bad idea. Well, good thing I'm going to talk about it next. Oh, baby, that transition. But first, I want to talk to you about my friends. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go between dining out, buying hockey tickets, and buying Robert Thomas sweaters? It's easy to lose track, and that's when Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start with building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save a lot more so I can buy hockey tickets. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. It is time that you and we talk again about Justin Folk and Nick Leddy. Why is it? Because I don't think either one of them is going to be wearing the blue note next season. And between you and I can't justify why they should. And you know, I've been having a really hard time with these two guys because I'm trying to see the positives, right? I mean, I'm looking at Nick Leddy. He's 34 years old right now. He was 16th overall in the 2009 draft, which feels like forever ago, right? This season, again, injuries, same games that Texier played, but 31 games in the regular season, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, and he spent a lot of time on the ice, okay? Almost 19 minutes per game, 2 penalty minutes. Now, he did miss, as I stated, 49 games due to that lower body injury. He did return in early February, and he was back on the third pairing. He also stepped up to the top defensive pairing in mid-March following some other injuries. And I have to say, he had 13 block shots and an assist. So, like, that's cool. And, like, yes, he's able to move the puck. He's good at skating and the transitions. But for whatever reason, maybe that didn't translate. And I kind of don't want to give him the excuse of injury. But he was able to then come back from injury, and he was able to do some positives in the game. Now, here's the thing. He signed a 4-year deal from 2020-22 to 26 with is $60 million total, and then annually it's $4 million, right? Here's the thing. I just don't know what team would want him. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude, and I'm not trying to say that to diminish anything that he has done in his career. And again, I respect him, but it's really hard for me to it's really, really hard for me to think about what team would want him. He also carries a modified no trade clause, so 16 teams. And again, that's half the teams. And you have to think about who would want him, right, out of the list of the teams that he has. And we don't know who these teams are. And this, by the way, this modified one, so he had a full one, right, last season. This upcoming season, so it's going to begin on June 30th. It's modified, so that's where the 16 teams come into play. I don't know who's on it. That's what makes it difficult for me. Because, that's half the teams. Like, you can maybe look at a team, and I'm not going off of teams that he's played on. I'm just purely going off of teams that may need that veteran help at the moment. Would you put him with like a Philadelphia type of team, like a Boston type of team? That's where my mind is going. So let me know what you think, but also would these other teams, again, we don't know who they are, would they be willing to spend the money on him? I don't know. That's the issue. So again, when we do look at Nick Leddy, we have to just take into account he's entering the final year. So do we just kind of give him a break? Or do we try to move him now, right? Because he will be a UFA next summer of 2026. But another player that we need to talk about, and a player that has been so frustrating for me, is Justin Folk, right? And again, I'm not trying to hate. I'm just talking about what I've experienced as a fan, as somebody that's watched this team all season and obviously seasons beyond. So he played 78 games this season, 4 goals, 1 power play goal. One of the 4 goals was a power play goal. 28 assists. Okay, not bad. 32 points in total. Penalty minutes, 30. Shots on goal was 124 with a 3.2% shooting percentage. Time on ice, about 22 and a half minutes, 82 hits, and 108 blocked shots. I will say a highlight game for him was that February 23rd game against the Avalanche. He had 2 assists and a 3-1 win. So again, not too shabby. Again, March 19th versus the Predators. He had 1 power play goal, 1 assist, and 4 block shots in a 4-1 win. And through the midway point, so that's he let's go say this. It kind of decreased, right? And that's what makes me super nervous about him, is that he can drive the puck and he is good with puck possession and puck control, but it's the stability that he doesn't necessarily show all the time, which makes him very inconsistent. And again, we look at him and, 32 points in 78 games. It's consistency, even though it dipped a little bit, right? They play him a lot. I mean, you're putting him in for about 22 and a half minutes per game. That is a lot of ice time for somebody like him. And we just saw so many spatial issues from him by the goalposts, which again draws me to my bigger concern about him. Can you trust him in different situations? Personally, 5-on-5, he's not doing so great when it comes to puck possession, right? He's the lowest on the Blues' D. He's only ahead of Suter. But again, I like Suter, so I'm a little bit biased towards Suter, right? Now, he does get used sometimes offensively. I mean, like, not like offensively, like he's playing offense, but like in different possessions. So he is fine in that aspect. So I wouldn't call him necessarily a solid 2-way defenseman, but here we go again. He also was one of the team leaders in giveaways, paired with Parayko. And again, this contributes to zone struggles. Whoa, who would have known that? That's his biggest issue. And again, we have to then look at his contract. Oh my goodness, can we get rid of Justin Folk? Well, it's not that simple, folks, okay? So he signed September 24th, after being traded from Carolina to St. Louis for 7 years. So again, his contract, it ends 2026, 2027 season. So a year after our other friend, Nick Leddy, okay? AAV, it's about $6.5 million, $45.5 million total from this. And the cap hit remains at 6.5 each season. Okay. He carries a full no trade clause during the current season from 2025-26 to 26-27. However, it converts to a modified no trade clause with 15 teams. We don't know who those teams are, right? This is a very high loaded type of salary, right? And again, he is ranked within the top 20 highest paid defensemen. And this deal, it's lengthy and there's a cost risk to it. And while his veteran presence is good on this team, sometimes you just can't necessarily justify it. So again, that to me is where I am coming from with him. But I want to talk about what you thought, right? Because I care about your opinions here on Locked On Blues. So I said, do you think Justin Folk will be with the, did I say both? You know what's funny about Twitter? They always try to make you like buy the X or whatever. So sometimes you can't necessarily see what you put out there. So my bad. I said, do you think Justin Folk will be with the Blues to start the upcoming season? 56% of you said yes, while 43% of you said no. And then we have a comment saying from Mr. Stubborn, I really hope not. So then I further asked you, who is more valuable on the Blues' defensive core? And I purposely only gave two options. I gave the options of Leddy and Folk. 28% of you said Leddy, while 71% of you said Folk. And we got a mixed bag of reactions. I am joking. It's all the same. Haley, you should put neither. I'm not answering. Okay, listen. If we have to choose between the two players, I think Justin Folk is better than Leddy. However, I also don't know how you would trade him. I said maybe like the first rounder. Again, like I'm not saying that's what they need to do. So let's go extend this conversation to Joel Hofer. I said, do you think the Blues will extend Joel Hofer? 79% of you said yes, while 20% of you said no. And then I said, what areas need to be addressed the most this offseason? We have offense at 23%, defense at 48%, the power play at 20%, and others. So here's some of the comments. Dump a Folk and bring in a better defenseman that's physical. Adding a forward would be nice, but it's not the biggest need. We have PK as an answer. Closing out games, especially when it's 6-on-5, and then we have 6-on-5 play. And exactly. And there is a reason why I didn't mention that, because that should just be a thing that we know needs to be done, because that is something that Doug Armstrong, the general manager of this team, said needs to be done. So again, let me know what you think. I personally, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, I get why the Blues are waiting to maybe extend Joel Hofer. I do. They want to see what the offers are. Maybe he does, the team does, whatever. Personally, I just would give him the money now because I don't think this team could afford to lose him. I like Colton Ellis. I do. But I just think that I'm showing my bias here. I just think that Joel Hofer is so much better. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Today was a fun episode. Let me know if you like the graphics that I've been showing lately. Tomorrow, I might be having on a special guest, so I will keep you posted on Twitter. But like always, let's go Blues.